it's Christy, and today I'm going to be doing the third quarter wrap up of my 2018 reading goals and also talking about my TBR for the fourth quarter that I'm calling my Fall TBR. And it's kind of weird because it seems like it should be winter, but it's not. So this is kind of like a weird, yeah, since it's the fourth quarter. It's my fourth quarter TBR. Okay, let's not overcomplicate it. So this quarter I read a total of 9 books, which for me is crazy. I never read that many books in that time frame, so that was really awesome. 2 of them were nonfiction, 1 of them was a writing book, so I'm going to walk through each of these books, maybe give like a little summary of kind of what I thought. A couple of them I might actually do full-length reviews, so if there are any that you're specifically wanting a review for, definitely let me know down below. So the first book that I read was War Storm by Victoria Aveyard, and this was the final book in the Red Queen series, and I was so excited about it. I blew through the first 2 Red Queen books when I first heard about them, and my husband was like, oh my gosh, like you must really like these books, because I was just obsessed. Like I couldn't do anything else. And then the third book, yeah, I was really obsessed with when my husband and I went to Nepal. I could have been like wandering around exploring Nepal, but I was like inside reading this book. So anyway, I was very excited about this last one and to see everything wrap up. And I want to say that I kind of made a mistake. I don't know if it was a mistake listening to the audio version of the book because I had read the first 3 in print. So I don't know if that's what it was, but I just felt like this one was so long. I don't know. I mean, I love this series, but I can't say I loved this one. I'm not super patient when it comes to the sort of like episodic writing. I used to be when I was younger, but I think I've sort of like outgrown that. So yeah, I think it was too long for me, and again, might just be a personal preference, and maybe people who do like longer books would really enjoy it. And then the other book that I read was The Handmaid's Tale, and because I had never read it. My sister read it in high school. I never read it, but I've been obsessed with the show on Hulu, and I felt so dumb because if you haven't read it, like mute the video for a second or something. It's really old at this point, you guys. So anyway, I felt really dumb because I read the book thinking that I was like gonna find answers because I had just watched the end of season 2 of the show, and I was like, I can't wait anymore, like they're dragging this out. I mean, it's awesome. I'm glad they're dragging it out because I want more show, but I was like, I am just so eager to find out like how she gets out of this, how she gets out of Gilead. So I read it and I was very disappointed because it just, I mean, it's sort of just like what am I trying to say? Because one, it's sort of like a piece of art in and of itself. It's like its own thing. And you know, the show was just inspired off of the book. It's not like, and obviously I didn't expect them to be the exact same, but I expected some sort of resolution for the characters. And so, yeah, I was just pretty disappointed about that. But the book was good, you know, not disappointing in, you know, the book itself, just the lack of answers. So then the third book I read was Brightly Burning by Alexa Donne. So Alexa is an author tuber, and that's actually how I discovered the book, was following her on her YouTube channel. And I love all the tips and everything that she gives. Writing advice is always really good, and she is a traditionally published author, so I like that she comes from that perspective. Anyway, I am going to do a full review on this one because I did have some thoughts that are a little too long for this video, so I'm going to do a dedicated video for Brightly Burning, so definitely stay tuned for that one. And then the next book I read is a nonfiction, and it is The Good Body. And it's, yeah, got like a really risque cover. So I read this book initially back in college, and it was for, I believe, a persuasive essay writing class, which was really fun. It's a great class. I learned a lot. But I loved this book, and I remember feeling so empowered, you know, by it, and it really got me thinking after I had read it, and I was recommending it to all the women I knew. You kind of have to be in the mood for this kind of a book, and I don't really know that I was, though it did kind of get the wheels turning a little bit in regards to how I talk to myself about my body. And I do think that there is value in this. I'm just saying you have to be kind of in the right mindset. That's all I'm saying. But it's a nice short little read, and she talks to some different women across the world and their definitions of beauty and how they see their body and stuff like that. And one of the things that I really took away from this was just how much my body does for me and how crappy I am to my body, and how the horrible negative ways that I describe my body to other people when it does so much for me. And it's a miracle in and of itself, the way that it functions, and just, I just need to start being nicer to my body. That's what I took away from this book. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about the writing book that I read this quarter. So this is actually one that I started at the beginning of the year. It's called The 90-Day Rewrite. It was not what I wanted it to be. I was wanting something that was going to be like a checklist, because I'm more of an organized person and I like checklists. I like to do things in order. And so I was really looking for something that would tell me from A to Z how to revise. Even though I've read a lot of books on revising, it just seemed like the promise of the book was in 90 days, you will have a revision in your hands, and I don't feel like that's what it delivered, at least not for me. And it just, like I said, it just wasn't what I was hoping that it would be, and it wasn't what I felt like it promised it was. And so yeah, it's definitely not that, like, read me and I'm going to tell you exactly how to revise your novel. It's more like, okay, you go revise and then come back and I'm going to tell you where you might have gone wrong. It's like, okay, that's not helping me at all. Like, you're supposed to be walking me through this. Okay. So anyway, I might be being maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on this book, but I just think for my type of personality that I was just looking for that really structured way of doing things. It just wasn't for me. But if you've read it and you loved it and it really worked for you, definitely let me know your experience. So another one of my goals this quarter was to get through my massive Shel Silverstein collection that my husband bought for me at the beginning of the year. So this quarter I was able to get through three of his books in my collection. And the first one I read was Where the Sidewalk Ends. So it's one of the anthologies that he has, just a collection of random poems. And I just really loved it. It brought back so many memories from when I used to do speech arts and I would perform some of his poems. Anyway, so yeah, it brought back a lot of good memories. I really loved it. There are just some amazing... Okay, so there's this one that I really loved called Snowman. If you're not familiar with Shel Silverstein, maybe this will give you a taste of kind of his writing style. This is just a snippet of the poem, but it says, "And there's never been a snowman who has ever seen July. No, they never see July, no matter how they try. No, they never, ever, never, ever, never see July. But the snowman sniffed his carrot nose and said, at least I'll try." His poems are so, like, poignant and just, I feel like they speak on much bigger themes, and that's just something that I love about poetry. The other two Shel Silverstein books that I read are I think they're my favorite of his. The first one is The Missing Piece, and then the second one is The Missing Piece Meets the Big O. So if you were trying to decide between the two of these, I definitely would say The Missing Piece Meets the Big O is my favorite, but they're both very similar. These two really touch on the topic of relationships and making the mistake of finding yourself or finding your value in another person, and instead learning to find that value in yourself and be independent and find, happiness in your own self-worth. And I love these so much. All right, so then the last book that I read this quarter was The Dinner List by Rebecca Serle. Hopefully that's how you say her name. This was one of the books that I got in the Book of the Month box that I made a video about recently. If you didn't catch that, I'll link it down below so you can be sure and check that out. But yeah, so this was the book that I picked up, and it's based on the concept of which 5 people, living or dead, would you have to dinner with you, if it could be anybody. And so there's this woman, and it's her 30th birthday, and it's a magical realism. So it doesn't explain why, it just is that there's some people that are deceased that show up to her dinner party, and it just sort of opens at the beginning of their dinner, and they're just all there, and there's, like I said, there's no why, there's no, fairy godmother that did this, it just is. So I thought that was really interesting because I had never read anything like that before. But this book was definitely, I was expecting, especially because Audrey Hepburn is in it, which was partly why I really wanted to read it. Audrey Hepburn is one of the guests at the dinner, and it was not as light as I thought it was going to be. I'm kind of like still deciding how I feel about it, to be honest with you. I feel like it's okay for a book to be sad, okay? I'm just gonna be clear. But I do think that there should be enough levity in it. I still feel like I benefited from reading it, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if I enjoyed reading it, but I'm glad I read it, if that makes sense. I do feel like you have something to gain from it. So right now I am currently reading Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and I'm so excited about this already. Just in the first, where am I? Like 50 pages. I'm really drawn into the story, and I'm loving the writing style, especially that classic writing style. I feel like I've been missing because I haven't read any classics in a while. I'm hoping I think I've been told there's quite a bit of romance in this book. So I think my theme for the rest of this year is going to be a big romantic element. It's just, I've been wanting to see more romance in these books that I'm reading. So I'm really hoping that delivers in Wuthering Heights. So the next 3 books that I'm planning on reading are by Sarah J. Maas. I have never read any of her books, if you can believe it. So I'm going to be reading her Court of Thorn and Roses trilogy. I was reading the synopsis of that, and I felt like it was right up my alley. It reminded me of Beauty and the Beast, and I've heard it's kind of a retelling of that story. So I'm really looking forward to that, and hopefully, yeah. And I have so many other books that have been accumulating on my TBR list. So I don't know how many I'm going to get to after the Sarah J. Maas trilogy that I mentioned. But we'll see if I have any other room. Another one that I want to read, I just recently found because I've been wanting to read more fairy tale retellings. And so I found this one called Cruel Beauty, and it's by Rosamund Hodge, and I don't know, the cover looked so beautiful, and also it just seemed really like kind of dark and romantic and mysterious and just like all those good things. So if I have extra time after the other trilogy, I think I'm gonna pick that one up. I've also never read any of the Lunar Chronicles, so that's one that's on my list as well. But I keep seeing Heartless everywhere, so who knows, maybe that one might be the first one that I try in that series. We'll see, who knows, maybe by my next wrap up I'll have read all of these plus more, and I'll have a lot to report back on. And then another nonfiction book that I've been meaning to pick up for forever is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I don't know, maybe I'll read this as an audiobook or something so I can squeeze it into this next quarter. And if you have any book recommendations for me, definitely also leave those down below. So those are all the books that I read this past quarter and everything on my list for the rest of the year. If you're new here and you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on my next read and recap, because you're going to want to see what I thought about it. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.